Good afternoon. This is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. Today I am in North Portland at the Rebuilding Center. I'm going to show you around inside. This is one of my favorite stores in town. It is all the way across Northeast Portland into the north side, so I don't often get a chance to come here because it's a little bit of a trek, but it's one of my favorite community resources and it's worth talking about. So let's talk about what the Rebuilding Center is first. It is basically a thrift store for building materials and household appliances and fixtures and things like that. So if I'm looking for wood for a project or trim or tile, these are all extra building supplies left over, often from contractors that they donate. Or it is things that are ripped out of old houses and reused. So in permaculture, we talk about how there are 12 principles, and one of those is produce no waste. This is one where people often think about it within the context of their own individual property. And I'm always encouraging folks to think about permaculture on a community scale. So within the context of your own property, you might see produce no waste as a way to turn every waste product into a resource that benefits your system. For example, composting toilets or reusing gray water from your sink or shower to water your fruit trees, something like that. In permaculture, we need to connect all elements of society and the way we order society in order to actually have true sustainability and to truly have a efficient and well-functioning, well-oiled machine that helps produce a high quality of life for all people and ecological abundance. So we can't think about being constrained just by the limits of our property. And also, a lot of us who pursue permaculture have kind of chucked the notion of a rat race life, right? We often choose to work less and have limited financial means in order to pursue things in life that matter more and we feel are more important than being a cog in the industrial machine. But having fewer financial resources means that you often have to be resourceful when it comes to projects. So when I use the Rebuilding Center, I am participating in the permaculture principle of produce no waste because I am taking something that got torn out of an old house and could have gone to the dump or left over bits and bobs and ends from contractors that otherwise would have gone to the dump, and I'm making something useful. I'm fixing up my house. I'm building a structure on my property that serves a purpose, and at the same time I am keeping within my budgetary constraints and my financial fiscal philosophy. So let's go and look here. I've found that it's good to have a list on my phone all the time of things I'm hoping to find at the Rebuilding Center. And it is like any thrift store, hit and miss. They do have a great Facebook page and an Instagram where you can see what has gotten donated recently. But it is hit and miss, and that's okay. For me, I've found that if I have a project, if I have a list of upcoming projects, and I just come over now and then and I stroll through, I often will find little by little enough of whatever is on my supply list that eventually I've collected enough within my budget to start my project. So I'm working on a lean-to bike shed because we don't have a garage on my property and I hate carrying bikes up and down from the basement. And I also hate having them stacked out back under our pergola where we would otherwise like to eat. Figure, let's make a little lean-to bike shed. I went through my wood supply in my wood shed in my garden shed, and I found most of the supplies, but not all of them. I need a little bit more to complete this project. So I'm going to go in here and look, and I'll show you around and talk about why this is such a great thrift store.
Whenever I go, I wear closed-toed shoes and bring gloves. I also take my own measuring tape, but should you forget yours, they have ones you can borrow. I always hit the tile section first. It's easy to find a small quantity for a small project. However, if you want to do a larger project, you may need to mix and match. A couple of my friends have redone their bathroom with an eclectic collection of Rebuilding Center tiles in various colors and sizes, and it looks really, really cute. They also tend to stock seconds and leftovers of the locally made hand-cut Pratt & Larson high-end specialty tiles. So you may be able to find some of these for a special project in your house or garden. The collection of old wooden windows removed from houses, businesses, and schools in the Portland area is enormous. They vary by cost depending on how many frames or panels are in the window. Now, be aware when you are using old windows for your projects, they may contain lead paint, and you will need to be careful when sanding them, and you need to paint them thoroughly before using them in a greenhouse or cold frame. I've found for my garden and house projects that I never need to buy hinges new. Old, sturdy, well-made antique hinges abound here for just a couple of dollars. I enjoy looking at the antique doorknobs, but it is the bins of drawer knobs and drawer pulls and dresser pulls that I have found very useful. They're super inexpensive, and I've used them in a number of projects around the house and garden. There are always really cool, funky old stoves, as well as modern ones. Be aware if you buy an antique stove, it is probably insulated with asbestos. I love that the whole warehouse and all of the decorations are made using materials from the Rebuilding Center and help create inspiration for the funky, repurposed aesthetic. Interior, exterior, and screen doors abound, all very affordable. I keep measurements of all of the doorways in my house on my phone, and I'm on the lookout specifically for an old wooden screen door for my front door. There is a selection here of used vintage furniture. However, I'm more on the lookout for materials and supplies, so I don't generally peruse this area. Toward the back of the shop, you'll find a large selection of lighting fixtures, as well as rows and rows of glass shades. I'm still kicking myself for the time I came through and there was a blue stained glass lighting fixture for just maybe $20 and I didn't pick it up. At the time, I didn't have a need for it, but boy, I wish I had gotten it. I have the perfect place for it now. There's usually always a good selection of antique porcelain and cast iron sinks, particularly small ones from bars or restaurants or schools. It's easy to find little sinks if you have a outdoor garden project or tiny house project where you need a diminutive porcelain sink. Also lots of pedestals and lots of large cast iron sinks as well. They're all really, really affordable. I really love this wall made out of old wood paneling and grates of various ages. Just a really cool aesthetic. I love that reusing materials can be beautiful as well as ecologically responsible. Two resources you might not have thought of using are cabinet doors and old drawers. Both of them are really useful for many projects. I've made swarm traps for my honeybees out of old drawers, and I've used drawers and cabinet doors for shoe racks, as well as even countertops in my kitchen. Just a great resource for $2 or $3 or $6. Old window screens are another great resource. They're good for making drying racks for herbs and veggies, as well as for making boxes in which to start your brassicas for the fall. The screens protect the young plants from cabbage lopers. Again, just be aware that when you're using old resources, check for lead paint. This old 6-foot by 6-foot window with the glazing in fantastic shape just screams greenhouse wall to me. In the second warehouse, you'll find trim, flooring, dimensional lumber, and exterior building supplies. I do love the reminder that we're not only keeping materials out of the waste stream, we are conserving our old growth forests by reusing lumber. Finding small quantities of asphalt shingles here is no problem. I can always get enough for a small shed or structure in the garden. Getting good quality dimensional lumber can be hit and miss here, as it is usually snatched up as soon as it gets into stock. There's always lots of flooring and trim in small quantities, usually enough for a small bedroom for molding or baseboard trim, but enough flooring sometimes for an entire large room. You just have to look.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that trip to the Rebuilding Center. When you are thinking about living a life that is in alignment with permaculture principles, think about extending it beyond the borders of your property and how you can help your community produce no waste, how you can help have sustainable systems, sustainable exchange and commerce within your community. In Portland, the Rebuilding Center is a great example of that, helping people, providing jobs and resources, and taking things out of the waste stream and putting them into the effective resource and material stream. Great permaculture. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and please check out the Patreon that I have in the description. That is a great way you can help support this channel. I'll be back soon from my permaculture property here in Portland.